tower better.
What was that?
A game feeling cinematic cannot come at the cost of players' immersion. And this is a big issue with the Callisto Protocol. The developers made conscious decisions to take away player control and player immersion in an attempt to make the game feel more cinematic, which to me is just really sad and boring game design. And it's a common thing to do in adventure action games, is to take away player control, even just for a short time, so that they can try to convey something as more cinematic or get some sort of camera shot that's cool or a cool camera angle. And it just does not work in a horror game because the player is not in control anymore.
What was that? To see a human being, especially portrayed by a very able actor like Josh, you empathize. You put yourself in that position. That actor is reminding you how terrified you'd be if you actually saw that. What would that be like if that was real?
Everything this guy just said is false when looked at through the lens of gaming. Maybe if you were talking about a film, it would be true. But we're talking about a video game. The player needs to become the character. They don't need to look at the actor to know how to feel. Things happen, the player really is there in the game world. So when something fucked up or scary happens, the player feels it. They don't need to see an actor feel it. It doesn't matter how good the actor is at acting. I mean, you could argue that in a really good horror game, you could replace all the characters with like fucking basic shapes like cubes and triangles, like a solid red cube. And you could remove all the voice lines and just reduce it to captions on the screen, and the game could still be like really scary. The same can't be said about other media. But in a cinematic adventure game, you probably do want good actors, because the camera is going to be focusing on them a lot. You're going to get to hear the voice lines, because the game is going to be designed around making sure you hear those voice lines. Because when the actors are acting and delivering their parts, you won't be doing anything, maybe walking, maybe watching a cutscene or QuickTime event. There are times in the Callisto Protocol that the player can only walk for no other reason at all other than that the developers don't want you to run. And this is immediately immersion breaking, which in turn is horror breaking. And usually the player's movement is restricted so that some cinematic thing can happen, like some rocks falling over or a bridge collapsing, or you're following your NPC ally and they need to make sure you listen to what they say because they paid these actors a lot of money and they don't want you to just sprint on down. And usually these moments are immediately followed by a quick time event, and it's just really formulaic. Another staple of the adventure game is to have the player crawl, shimmy, and vault over objects by simply having the player hold the forward key and letting the game control the rest. And you know, I understand if you need to have the player crawl through a vent in order to cover up loading times of the next section so that you can load in props and items and whatnot. But I do not believe that all the crawling parts in the Callisto Protocol are simply for that reason. And every time you have one of these adventure game elements happening, as the player, you don't feel scared anymore. You know you're safe. You know once you enter the vent, you're perfectly fine, nothing bad can happen. You can't be attacked in a vent. You can't be attacked while shimmying. Can't be attacked while climbing. You're in no danger at all. There's no horror. You're just watching it happen as the player. Yeah, you're holding the forward key, but you might as well just be watching a cutscene. And then they string these adventure game mechanics together, like you'll go from crawling through a vent to coming out of the vent and opening a locker, and then some small enemy jumps out at you, and it's a quick time event. It's not fun. It's not scary. It's just like it might as well have been one long-ass cutscene, because you're not in any danger, and you're not doing anything besides pressing one button. And while we're on the topic of player restriction, I want to talk about the grip gloves that are supposed to function like the gravity gun from Half-Life or the kinesis module from Dead Space, where the player can pick up objects and use those objects, like throw them at an enemy. The difference with the Callisto Protocol is you can actually pick up the entire enemy. However, there's very little dynamic objects that you can actually pick up with the gravity gloves. Like when you're playing, there's all these objects around you and it looks like you should be able to pick up lots of things, but you can rarely ever pick up anything. There's maybe a few different items, but that's it. And then the level's designed around the fact that you can pick up enemies and throw them into instant kill walls and things like that. Like what? There's no puzzles to solve with it. There's nothing else to do really with the gravity glove besides pick up enemies and throw them. So it's just really simple. And then one other thing I noticed while playing through the Callisto Protocol is the levels are designed to look like you're high up in areas where there's rails and platforms that you could fall over. And there's little areas that are like out of bounds that the player can't reach. And if you pick up enemies, you can just drop them in these areas and they insta-die. And it's super immersion breaking. Just look at some clips I got. And this is on the hardest difficulty too. This clip's pretty funny. Check out all the work they go through with the cutscene, setting up this big, scary enemy. And then watch what happens.
Purge cycle initiated.
Here we go.
Purge cycle in progress.
What the f...
Warning. Anomaly detected.